is Emily and Eric again.
Baby Luca this
and
time.
Baby Lou, yep.
On camera.
So cute. He's wide awake this time. But it has been a long time, like 3 weeks since we last posted our first part of our birth story. And I know people have been asking for the rest. So I apologize for how late this is, but you know how life goes with 4 kids. It's crazy. Oh my goodness. And you will hear him. He is a very noisy baby, so you will definitely hear him squawk. Maybe you might even see him puke a little bit because he just spits up all the time. That's part of his.
Yawns.
And yawns. Yeah, so cute. Part of his babiness and his Cri Du Chat is some acid reflux. But anyway, where we left off was that Luca had failed his car seat test. He had a low body temperature.
Low muscle tone.
No, low muscle tone. And they were like, yeah, let's just send him over to NICU because we want to keep an eye on him a little bit longer. And remember that we had asked for a genetic test, like right after I gave birth. So we go over there. I don't even remember how many nights we were in there before.
I think he's only there for a couple days.
Couple days, and then we had like a COVID exposure at my friend's wedding. Also represent Doc's house. That's her place. It's amazing. If you need to find recovery and need some temporary housing in the Rochester area, check out Doc's house. Okay, remember that. They're amazing. Changed so many people's lives. Check it out on Facebook. I'll link it in the comments, or not in the comments, but in the bio. So check it out. Anyway, so we were at Tori's wedding. There was some exposure to COVID, whatever. Okay, so then because some folks were testing positive close to us, we tested ourselves. And did you test? You tested
Me
positive?
Me and Teddy, yeah. So 2 of us tested positive.
And then I did not, but that was from a home test, and they had wanted like a more, official test. So I am like freaking out and crying. Jaira was sitting right over there on the other side of the couch, and I was like freaking out. Do you remember?
Yep.
And you're like, it's okay, be positive. And in that moment, I was like, bro. Yeah. I was like, no. I need to be with my baby. Super hormonal, super tired and everything. Anyway, we called. They said that we could visit him as long as there was negative testing. So
you went and got an official test done at the hospital.
But this is the day that we found out about the genetic testing, because I was like, oh, okay, I came in, but I had to then leave because they're like, okay, yeah, since people in your household tested positive, we really want you to do like an official thing. And I was like, okay. So I started packing up all my things and to leave and take a test. And all of a sudden I see a doctor, a whole team of people, but Luca's doctor with them, and they're like, some of them have like their mask and garb on because of the COVID exposure, but they were like, okay, hey, can we talk to you actually? And I had recognized a couple of people from the genetics team. They're like, it's genetics, we just need to talk with you. So I'm like, they like led me to a room, a separate private room with like a couch and whatever. Like it was not Luca's room. And I was alone because Eric was home with COVID.
Yep, so I had to stay home with the boys. And so I was just on the phone. Emily called me and had me on speakerphone while the doctors were human conversation, which it was already tough enough, like Emily was saying, to not be able to go to the hospital and be with the little guy while he was in the NICU and everything like that. But then all of a sudden, when you get pulled into a room by like specialists or whatever, it's a whole different ball game. So then I had Lily watching the boys while I was in a separate room on the phone, just in case it was something bad and didn't want her to like hear it right away. So, and obviously the boys are probably super noisy, but that was an interesting time for sure.
Yeah, I realize I've never really heard your perspective from that day.
Yeah, I mean, it was right away, any kind of phone call, I think when your kid's in the NICU and the doctors are like, we need to talk to you beyond just like the regular updates, like it's already scary, but I think it's just another level of like, another level of scary and just a little bit, I don't know, tougher when you can't be there in person. But I think at that time still, like we were still completely operating under the impression that kind of the low muscle tone stuff was due to some sort of virus or just him being a little premature. So like I was a little concerned, but not like super, I guess, scared yet. But I did, obviously, like I said, right away, I want to make sure that I was separate from Lily and the boys, just in case some bad news was delivered. And and just I could actually hear because handing it to your loud.
And you will learn this very, very soon if you don't know them already. But yeah, it was very scary. I just knew immediately when they pulled me into a different room that it was going to be not the best news because everybody's face is very like somber and it's not a day I really ever want to go back to ever in my life. But anyway, so they sat me down and I'm like, wait, can I just need to call my husband. So then that's what we're talking about here. Got him on the phone, and because the geneticist needs to get across the severity or the seriousness of the condition that your child may be diagnosed with, there's no sugarcoating. So she sat me down and she's like, okay, Mrs. Furson, your son, we did the whole genome sequencing and results came back, and your son has, I'm looking at this because this is what she handed me. She handed me a sheet like this. So I was like looking along at this. And she said, your son has a diagnosis called Cri Du Chat. And then she went on to explain what Cri Du Chat meant. Oh, you okay? Okay. And she just really gave me only baseline information, just saying that it is his 5th chromosome has a deletion, a small deletion, and it causes like delays. So she said that oh buddy boy, I know. You want your Pessy? Your Pessy?
Probably having some reflux.
Yeah. Buddies. Yeah. Okay.
What are you guys doing?
So she's like, your son will have challenges. Luca is going to have challenges. And I'm just like, okay. And then I think I honestly don't even remember everything she said, but I did ask her, well, is he gonna live? Like, is he gonna live? And she was like, I can't say that for sure.
It was a super weird. So she started off I remember she said, I think we have, a reason, or this diagnosis explains some of the things we're seeing, like the low muscle tone.
Facial differences.
Facial differences and stuff like that. And one thing too to just like keep in mind right away is that with the genetic testing, the full spectrum genetic testing that we asked for, they specifically do like a rapid test and then the full spectrum test as like separate stages. So we were getting these results after just a few days after he was born, which meant that it was like part of the short list of like red flag syndromes or whatever, or like items that they test for all the scary stuff quickly. So right away, just because we got some sort of diagnosis within like the first week of the genetic test, we knew that it was pretty impactful. And CDC or Cri Du Chat too is just one of those things where it's so broad spectrum that, like she was kind of saying, or like we kind of found out afterwards and through talking with her, that the severity and the type of challenges that he has or types of medical help that he needs could be fairly easy to take care of, like not much more difficult than the club foot and stuff like that, and like some academic interventions, but it could also be extremely scary. And there's instances where, like Emily kind of just alluded to, it can be like life-threatening within, a
very short amount of time, like in the first year of life.
And then also because it was like the rapid test, right? So they had just got the results, and it seems like from our perspective, they essentially got the results and they came right down and told us. So the geneticist hadn't had a chance to follow up or like really go over the case with his pediatrician, which is super scary. So that conversation was not the most pleasant thing in the world, maybe not our most pleasant like physician experience.
Honestly,
ever.
They should have done better.
Yeah.
Really, it was really awful. Like,
yeah.
It was not great. It was not done very well. There was not, like, nobody like put their hand on me and was like comforting me physically or anything.
Yeah.
And like Eric said, the geneticist didn't talk with our doctor about like our doctor could have said like, oh, well, Luca isn't presenting with this and this, so it's probably not the severe case. So I'm just sitting there. You're probably panicking too.
Yeah.
But
we didn't even know what to say.
Yeah.
We didn't know what to ask. We were so like dumbstruck.
She's like, do you have any questions for me? And I'm just like,
so the doctor was great. His physician, pediatrician was helpful.
Yeah.
He stepped in and said, well, can you like tell us like what the worst case scenario and what the best case scenario is? And so that was where the doctor kind of laid out that like best case scenario, he has some like minor like cognitive challenges down the road, and maybe like needs some extra time with talking and walking. The worst case scenario, he like, or like a middle case, I guess, scenario would be like he has like severe interventions and cognitive delays that are like similar to like a severe case of Down syndrome, and like the worst case scenario is death basically. Like it can present with issues in some of their organs and their brain, so there's like the possibility that he would never even make it home from the NICU. So she was like, that's what the full range is, and we don't know, we can't rule any of these things out for sure until we do like an echo and like a brain CT and stuff like that. So we were freaking out, kind of panicking right away, and like still didn't really know what kinds of questions to ask. And yeah, for me, sorry.
Yeah, no, you go ahead.
Specifically for like me at home, it was again kind of crazy because since I had tested positive for COVID, they said, you can't come back for like five more days after we found out, I think it was. I don't remember how many days it was, but basically they said like, I can't come back there. That's not a big deal for like protocols for sending kids home with parents who have COVID, because kids end up in those homes anyways, whatever. And it's so hard for the little ones to get, but they said we can't have people with COVID coming around the NICU because these kids are already at risk and that sort of thing. So that was where I was kind of having the extra layer of, oh my God, what did I do? Because I was thinking there's a chance that like he might already be gone by the time we get to go see him, right? So that was super crazy. Like I didn't even know like what to do with my hands at the house, and my mom came over to help with the boys and stuff with the two older boys, and I was just doing whatever I could around the house, like stay busy and work on projects and stuff, because even just thinking about it was like too much for me at the time. So I was completely like at the mercy of like whatever information I could get for Emily, and just trying to hope that he would obviously still be alive, and if there were any issues that he would like still be, even like cognitive, right, and like awake and everything when I got to see him again. Obviously the hope is that there would be like no issues at all from any of those additional scans, but like
At that point, we
Yeah, at
just
that point we
wanted
didn't
him
know.
to live.
Now the crazy part, after all that like sadness and like car crash experience in your mind, the nurse practitioner like a day or two later, as they were like going through and doing like the echo, I guess it would have been the next day because it was obviously pretty urgent. So we did like echo and the brain scan.
Can I
Go ahead.
just, I'll let you get back to that, but I was going to like add on to you saying you didn't know, and mind you, I was leaving because I needed to go get a COVID test. So I kind of felt the same way. Like if I test positive, I won't be able to go back.
Yeah.
I just need him to live. We just need him to live. Like when I tell you, I kept asking, is he going to live? She kept saying, I can't say that for sure. There was not like, that's all. So then I left with like,
Yeah, panic still.
with panic.
Yeah.
I walked around like a zombie the rest of the day. And then I was staying separate away from Eric too because and the boys, because I'm like, well, if I'm Luca needs one of us at least. So if I'm the only one who can go, then I'm just gonna stay separate from Eric. So then
we couldn't even like console each
Yeah.
other because we were
separate.
apart for like
Yeah.
was it 3 days that you were still
Yeah,
apart?
and my
4
mom
days?
was in Alaska, so I didn't have my mom here. And was your mom? Your mom had it too.
I think my mom, or she was exposed at work, so
Yeah,
she was afraid to go in.
I was basically just away from everyone. My dad and Eleni, my dad's amazing partner. She's so great. They were going and visiting Luca in the hospital when we couldn't be there.
Yeah, so he had some people there.
Yeah.
I think Robin maybe went into sick compliance, but yeah.
No, she had COVID.
Oh yeah, she was the last one. Yep. So he had a few visitors, but it was definitely a wild time.
Yeah.
And yeah, super intense that we did not have any answers yet, but didn't know or couldn't like console each other or be there for each other either. Just talking over the phone every day, and she would send me pictures of Luca and stuff. But yeah, so then it was a big push or important to get the echocardiogram obviously and the brain scan scheduled right away so that they could rule out the scary, potentially.
I tested negative, by the way,
issues.
and got to go back the next day. So yeah.
But so that all was fast forward real quick, just to alleviate concerns. Obviously, all came back negative.
Yeah.
So that was great news. But like while we were waiting for results, or while they were ordering, like the nurse practitioner who was in charge of his care, like when the pediatrician wasn't there. So she was the one who had been most closely following his case and kind of taking care of him, in charge of his care. And she was the one who came in and said, well, I understand that, according to this sheet of paper and according to the diagnosis, like all these things could be wrong, right?
No,
But
go for a second, man. Stand up.
she said that, basically told us that if he had any of these things going wrong with him, like in his brain or heart or other internal organs that were severe enough to cause premature death or even probably death within the first few months of life, he would be showing symptoms. Like there was nothing really, and that was why up to this point they were really assuming that it was like some sort of minor illness that he caught in the brief time he had been after his birth, or like some sort of just association with being born a little bit early, because he didn't really have any other major symptoms. She said they obviously can't rule it out, like they have to do the echocardiogram, they have to do the brain scan, but the likelihood of him having something that severe and not be showing issues with like how well he's urinating or being dehydrated or other like major red flags that they check for at all newborns was super unlikely. So that was where, dialing it back to that original conversation, it would have been fantastic if the nurse practitioner had had a chance to follow up, or even the pediatrician to share all of his records with the genetics team before they came and talked to us.
Because he passed his newborn screening just fine. Yeah.
Right. So they're like, if he had some of these issues, the body temperature thing would be like way more severe. Mm-hmm. His oxygen saturation stuff would probably, if there's something wrong with his lungs, be really bad even outside of the car seat, not just when he's in the car seat, and all those sorts of things. So they're like, the chances of him having
the severe kind.
Yeah, having the very severe kind that we were obviously most scared of in that moment was very low.
Yeah.
And so that was when we were like, well, what the heck?
Yeah, we were so scared. So scared. And yeah, it was awful. I think I did call the nurse practitioner that night too, didn't I? And I had asked, like, I'm just so worried he's gonna die. And she goes, oh, we have no concerns for him, like, die. Like, we are not concerned that he's gonna die.
Yeah.
So that also made me go, oh, okay.
Yeah. The only, I would say, the silver lining of that whole experience was that after you're like, oh my gosh, my kid's gonna live to go home, and like the other range of things that could be wrong with this diagnosis, after we hear, oh yeah, like he's fine, his brain scans came back clean, his heart scans came back clean, everything else seemed to not really matter. We were like, okay, whatever, like we have to do follow-ups with pediatricians every couple months, and he's going to need extra like weigh-ins, and he's going to need in-home interventions for school and stuff. We were like, that does, like, all that seems so small.
Yeah.
And what we're going through right now, even with all of his appointments and stuff, it seems so insignificant and, like, I don't want to say easy, because it's definitely not easy, but it seems so trivial when I think about
not having him come home.
Yeah, like not even having him make home from the hospital, which is a crazy time. So I guess that would be the one silver lining to that initial kind of shock, and maybe like not the greatest handling of the news.
Yeah.
But.
And that was an idea, honestly, that I have moving forward, is having some sort of like pamphlet or something with like questions, suggestive questions for parents to ask in those situations, because you're not expecting to get like that kind of life-changing news, and when you do, you're kind of in shock, and knowing which like you can't even hardly think, let alone come up with questions to ask.
Yeah, definitely. So I would say
that's something I think would suggest, and something I would like to begin advocating for in hospitals, to support parents, because I mean that was really a really rough experience.
Yeah, and I think even just like, not even for if you're having a diagnosis like that, but even things like watch out for and ask for if you're a first-time parent, in terms of like things you're noticing or questions you might have about their behaviors and the things they're presenting, because obviously every birth experience is a little bit different, and if you are a first-time parent or not a parent at all yet, they even say in the hospital that like giving birth is traumatic, right? So there's all kinds of stuff that could go wrong or whatever, and so kind of wild and crazy experience. So even I think for a first-time parent, questions to ask during the birthing process at any time, and then like questions to ask for sure. If you're getting some sort of diagnosis after the fact. I think, I mean, we'll probably talk way more about this later on in another video, but I think generally like things I would say just short list right now is, for sure you're going to talk to doctors who have like different areas of specialization or whatever, specialists in different areas. Like take advantage of those opportunities that they say, we've got this person you can talk to, this person you can talk to. Definitely take advantage of those things. It's always way better to have the information beforehand, and afterwards. Like, I'm glad that we talked to a geneticist before we even had him and had the testing done, and push for information. Like, we probably could have been like, well, can you like follow up and like look at his records or whatever, and like ask for more. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, that sort of thing.
100%.
You'll hear that all the time when it comes to
you'll hear that all the time from us.
For sure. Like, feel like you, I mean, obviously you need to advocate for your kid, but it's so easy for, I think, especially in large hospitals like the one we go to, where they get kind of siloed, and so it's separate teams doing their own things and checking out their lists, and you kind of sometimes need someone to like bring it all together. And so I think just advocate for those conversations, ask for them to talk to each other before they talk to you, or like after they talk to you, to like go back and kind of connect the dots for you, because I think that's a piece that can just kind of be easily missed in the rigmarole of like multiple different specialists. That's a separate conversation. So afterwards, after we got this diagnosis, like we talked about, his scans came back clean, so we were super excited. I got to go back and start seeing him.
Yeah, that was
so that was super
good.
Yeah, that was obviously extremely exciting for me to be able to go back and start. I think I spent out with him that first day.
Yeah, because I hadn't been able to see the boys yet either.
Yeah, so she hadn't had a chance to go to them.
Yeah, I had still been away from them, so it was so crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, so that first night after being separated for like 3 nights or whatever, I spent like the whole afternoon with Luca in the NICU and stayed overnight with him. She had obviously been staying overnight with him before that, or staying at my brother's house. And then she got to go home with the boys, the older 2 boys, and Lily, which was, I think, kind of crazy. After, all you want to do, right, is go back and see the baby at the hospital.
Yeah.
And so being separate from him.
And I was still, remember, I literally had just had a baby. Right. So I was still, like, recovering. Like, in a time that I should have been, like, at home, resting in bed, I'm, like, going back and forth. I'm, like, freaking out. I'm like having more trauma on top of bodily trauma. Yeah, it was crazy. I think I went to the grocery store with your mom and the boys, and she ended up having to push me in like a cart for in a cart with a special seat for adults because I couldn't even walk anymore. Like thought I was gonna pass out. I turned like white, and your mom was like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "No."
Yeah. So we had that going on with the boys, taking care of the boys, running back and forth between the hospitals. So then both of us were like tag teaming back and forth in the NICU for. He was in the NICU for like another week after that. Right?
He was in there for a total of 3, yeah? 3 weeks?
Or I think it was just under 3 weeks, maybe.
Maybe just under, yeah.
Yeah. So like another week and a half.
It's a time warp in there, you guys. It's a time warp on like in the 2 days that you're in the hospital after having the baby, but NICU is another level of time warp. It's insane.
Tiny little segmented room by yourself.
Yeah, time is nothing there. It's just
so we were traveling back and forth between our house, which our house is like almost 20 minutes away once you park and stuff like that. So tag teaming back and forth, having Emily stay there, having me stay there, staying with the boys, having family come watch the boys, so that every now and then we could both come be there. And then Lily like going and staying with her grandma, sometimes being here, sometimes trying to be at the hospital with us, visiting the baby. Also trying to coordinate visiting with all of our family members who had been able to see him, because like her mom was out of town and everything like that, and so that was a super busy and chaotic time for sure. But as far as like actually Luca is concerned, over those couple weeks, after he was out of the woods with the really, really scary stuff like his internal organs, the only thing really keeping him at the NICU was they weren't sure if he was going to pass the car seat test yet or not, but his oxygen saturation was actually looking really good, and it was just feeding that was keeping him there. So because of the low muscle tone and because of the syndrome, he's just, number one, physically hard for him to like stay awake and stay energized enough to like finish a whole bottle or finish an entire feeding session. And then he just takes a little bit longer, a presentation of Cri Du Chat syndrome is that it can just take them a little longer to learn these instinctive things like nursing or walking or talking. And so it wasn't necessarily unexpected, but that was the only thing keeping him there. So that was what led us to the kind of determining factor of taking him home when we did take him home, and that was Emily really pushed the doctors to let us take him home with like a feeding tube. Yeah.
Again, squeaky wheel gets the grease. I was like, we literally could do this. I could do this. This looks very simple to do. There's no reason why we can't do this from home. But anyway, I just thought I would read for you the definition or like the disease overview of Cri Du Chat syndrome. Oh, you're not so happy, are you? So this is part of the paper that I got from the doctor. Okay. I'll just read this one. So Cri Du Chat is a 5p deletion. 5p deletion is a chromosomal change in which a small amount of genetic material on chromosome 5 is missing. The deletion occurs on the short arm of chromosome 5, are associated with Cri Du Chat, which is a condition characterized by a high-pitched cry, which Cri Du Chat actually means cry of the cat. Intellectual disability, developmental delay, microcephaly, so a smaller head, low birth weight, hypotonia, so that's low muscle tone, and characteristic facial features including hypertelorism, low set ears, which he kind of has, a rounded face, epicanthal fold, so like his eyes kind of fold in a little bit, and then what's it called? Preocular tags, which he's got like a little couple nodules like on one of his ears. Club feet and cerebellar atrophy, which he had in utero. We noticed that in our scans was the small cerebellum. Growth challenges such as intrauterine growth restriction, which also makes sense with we had a bellamentis cord insertion, so of course way off to the side, that was part of growth restriction too. Failure to thrive and short stature have also been described. So he is having a hard time growing. That's still something we're struggling with, is like him gaining weight. And that's kind of it. That's like what we got. That was kind of where it rested, the information that we got. But that's just for you to know, that's like the baseline information. And we'll definitely, you'll learn more about what Cri Du Chat is and how it really looks different on each kiddo who is diagnosed with Cri Du Chat. So, I mean, it can look like Eric was mentioning before. It's like a very, very broad spectrum. And the size of the deletion on the chromosome, I guess, doesn't really tell you whether or not, like, tell you how severe it's going to be.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's not something where they can like kind of look at the genetic test and say, okay, well, he's probably going to have more trouble with this or more trouble with that, or, you know, like she said, there's going to be severe developmental delays, and I guess the deletion, to my understanding, does dictate like how severe of a delay or developmental issue they have, but you don't know how it's going to present, right? So it might be, in his case, like a fairly sizable deletion. That could mean that it manifests itself like in more physical areas, so like hard time walking or getting really tired easily, and like maybe, or like hard time speaking, learning to speak. Could end up being nonverbal. But it could also mean like more the more typical cognitive things that we associate, like Down syndrome and stuff, so actually learning and other like fine motor skills beyond the things that are like more specific to Cri Du Chat.
yeah, and I think for me, even right after learning about Cri Du Chat, and I'm gonna say this outright, we have felt that not a lot of doctors who we've worked with have been very familiar with Cri Du Chat. Like 60 kids in the US are born every year with Cri Du Chat. So that is, it's not like incredibly rare, but it's a pretty small number.
Right.
Where if you think of the whole United States and all the 50 states where all those 60 per year are gonna land, it's like your doctor may never have worked with a patient in their career. And in fact, it's one of those, in med school, we've heard that it's one of these diagnoses that
Like throw a curveball
Yeah.
issue on the, just
On
to
the
keep you on your
exams.
toes, and the medical exams they
Yeah.
put in there just to make sure that you were listening, but like they don't really expect it to come up. And I think that's been like our experience exactly, is that like a lot of the specialists that we see maybe have seen it or worked with CDC patients before, but you know, definitely like none of the residents that we have, and a
Yeah.
lot of the more general practice doctors that we've worked with have not worked with a kid with this diagnosis before, which has been an interesting experience for sure.
It's been frustrating because we have to be the ones to educate ourselves and be squeaky, basically. It feels, and honestly, that's our geneticist. We had a follow up with her, and she's like, "Well, you know Luca best, and you probably know more about this than us because you're, doing a deep dive into what this is." And
we'll have another video later talking about all the specific things and engagements that we've had so far and the challenges that we've had, and just like a status update on everything that's happened in the 3.5 short months of his life.
It's a very long video. I'm so sorry, and we probably all over the place.
But there's definitely been a lot of interesting interactions and like a lot of back and forth and thinking we're going to do one thing and having to do something different.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely been an adventure. I think to like just put it in perspective too, like again, it's not necessarily even the physician's fault or whatever, but like Rochester, Minnesota, we live in the Rochester area. Obviously, it's like the second largest city in all of Minnesota. And then we have the Mayo Clinic here, which is massive, right, world-renowned medical center, and fairly few of the folks that we've interacted with in the pediatrics or postpartum ever have had interactions with
at Mayo
Clinic. And to my understanding, there's only like 2 other kids with this diagnosis living in the Rochester area right now.
I think 1.
Or just 1, yeah. So that, I think, kind of sums it up. That unless if one of those doctors happens to be treating that specific one other kid in the area, they probably haven't heard about it since medical school, or they're supervising physicians now and haven't had an experience with it since they were residents 10 years ago or whatever. So it's just a specific challenge of the diagnosis.
And however frustrating that's been, which we'll go over later, I will say I'm so grateful that we live really close to a really great hospital system, just because we can get decent care, for our baby. And like there's lots of little clinics we could take him to. We have lots of resources at Mayo, which is really great. So that's been fabulous. Our social worker who was assigned to us, and we've had a couple of social workers we've worked with, but they've been fabulous, so helpful, so kind, and we've got an amazing care coordinator. So that for Luca, and she calls like every week or so, checking in on us and seeing how Luca is, and she knows everything. Like she knows everything about Luca. She reads his notes. She like makes suggestions. She kind of helps keep everything for him organized. We call her his project manager. Yeah.
I mean, I guess kind of in conclusion, he's definitely had some challenges. There's been some incidents since we brought him home, but for the most part, there's been a couple of scary incidents. We'll talk about this later. He's been admitted to the hospital twice since he's been home, after being home from the NICU. But like generally speaking, there's been no new like curveballs in terms of, oh man, there's this big new scary development in his diagnosis. Everything that we've come up with so far, which again we'll go over later on, specifics, has been kind of what's expected with the syndrome, so no surprises there. Just a couple like scary incidents that happen on their own, but he's doing good now, and he's
really good,
mostly happy, and he's getting to the point where we can kind of start to see his personality poke through a little bit. So we'll get some more updates out to you guys on kind of what
really soon. We promise not to be so long this time.
On what's kind of been going on and what we're currently going through and have gone through. And
so,
some other fun videos too.
Yes. Yeah, because we want you to see the other kids, because we do have other kids. 3.
And not just
3 other
us
ones.
talking.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Please remember to share this video if you remembered, and that would be so helpful to us. We just really want to create that community of understanding and community. I said community already, but inclusivity. Is that a word?
Solidarity.
Inclusivity, is that a word? Did I say that correctly? Inclusiveness? I don't know. I used to teach kids, but words.
Hello.
Hi. Old plump face. Anyway, right. Thanks, guys, so much. See you in the next one.
Bye.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and turn on post notifications for more videos.